Hello, bonjour, kia ora. I'm Adrian, and this is AInVFX Deep Dive. Today, we're going to create our own Lego shot from scratch. We start with a photo and use ATI Workflow to animate it. To generate our inpainting mask, we're going to introduce CoTracker for tracking and SAM2 for segmentation. Then we're going to bring all of that into VACE with our own artwork to create the final shot. Allez, c'est parti! In ComfyUI, make sure you have the latest version of all the nodes. For this new tutorial, you will be needing a few. So let's go into the Manager, Custom Node Manager, and grab the latest version of the one video wrapper from Kijai. Is Notepack. And segment anything too. We're also going to be using the CoTracker node and the video helper suite. So instead of all of those, restart ComfyUI and you should be good to go. Then we're going to go into Workflow, browse templates under ComfyUI one video wrapper, and we're going to grab the ATI example workflow. Make sure you have all the models downloaded so you can find them on Hugging Face using that link here. So we're going to update all the path, make sure you can find everything. So we're going to be using the ATI 14B model. We're going to be using CosV to speed up our generation. Can you use the T5 text encoder, the 1.2 VAE, and the clip vision. I took a picture from my son's Lego. I figured there would be a good test case for that exercise, so feel free to grab the same image. It's in the description if you want to do it at the same time as me. Going to resize it to 512 to speed up our iteration. Let's create a new canvas so we get rid of the original curve that was here. And for now, I'm going to disable the video combine so we don't pull on the entire graph. And let's run that. So now what you should see the ATI tracks visualize that grabbed our input image and applied a curve on top of it. So the spline editor has been updated recently. And now you have access to a menu with your right click. And you can do quite a few things that are very neat. Like you can now create multiple splines inside the same curve editor. So you can say add new spline, move that one around, and then add new spline, move that one around. And you can even create static points. So if you want to pin an object in space, you can say add a new single point and put that on the table, and another single point to put on the background. So if we run that, you should now see all those tracks with a single spline editor. Keep in mind they will all be using the same points to sample, so they all have the same timing. So let's clean up a bit. So you can say delete current spline, and you can also switch from one spline to the other. So you could say next spline, next spline, next spline, and then delete that one if you wanted to. For now, I'm going to delete everything. Yeah, I can't delete the last one. Let's create a single point for the background, a single point for the table. Let's change it to linear. This line broke. Let's create a new canvas. I'm going to take my spaceship and I'm going to make it take off. So we're going to go all the way up. Let's go to monotone. Then I'm going to bring back my static point that I broke earlier. And then we're going to take those Lego people and we're going to make them turn around so they can watch the spaceship take off. So let's add one more spline. Let's change that to cardinal. And let's add one last one for the girl and do the same thing. Now that if you wanted to, you could invert the point order, so that allows you to have the curve going in the opposite direction. Quite handy. Let's preview that. So we have our spaceship taking off and our two people moving. We're gonna run that through ATI and let's see what we get. Actually, before we do that, let's change the prompt. We're gonna write Lego spaceship launches into the air. Two Lego people are turning to watch the takeoff. And let's run that. To save you some time, I'm going to speed up the video, so I'll see you back in a second. And I'm running out of memory. So let's tweak that again. Let's set the block to swap to 20, which is going to offload more of the, so as a reminder, we have 40 blocks on the 14B model. So at the moment, they're all running on the GPU. So you can have some of them running on the CPU. It's going to make your inference a bit slower, but at least it's going to cost less VRAM. Feel free to tweak those settings. Same for the torch compile setting based on your own hardware to make sure you can run your generation smoothly. Sweet. So we have a spaceship taking off. Our people are a bit funny, so we're going to improve them. But the rest looks cool. Okay. Let's reorganize a bit that graph. So we see what's happening a bit better. So I'm going to save two videos, one with the tracks for debugging, and then that's going to be my final output without the tracks. What I'm going to do, because at the moment all the curves have the same timing, I'm going to create two splines editor. Let's move this node here. And I'm going to combine them with an append string to list. So I'm going to go coordinate of the first one plus coordinate of the second one, and then they all go into that reroute here. I'm going to remove the curves that are currently being duplicated. So I'm going to delete the current spline, delete the current spline, and here I'm going to delete that one, delete that one, and I'm going to delete the one with the spaceship. So let's do next spline until it's selected, and then we can delete it. So now I have the two splines for the people on that spline editor and the rest on the other one. let's bypass the final video combine for now, so we don't pull on the entire graph. We're running into an error, so we're going to do a bit of debugging. First, let's save my scene because I still haven't saved it. So let me go ATI. Then let's duplicate this node here. Still connect the BG. And let's just work on that for now. Coordinate to tracks and image to image. Okay, let's bypass that node and let's just focus there. Okay, so what's happening? We know that, let's do a new canvas entirely. If there is one curve, that works well. At the same time, we're going to use a preview any node that's going to output the coordinates so we can see the syntax. Okay, so if there is one curve, we have all the coordinate x and y between curly bracket, and they all surrounded by one single square bracket and closing with one square bracket. Now, if I start adding another spline, and I run that again, the preview works well here, but notice that the syntax has changed because there is more than one spline coordinate. Each spline is in between its own square bracket, and all the splines are then between one square bracket opening and one closing square bracket. Okay, so again, remember, if I go back to only one spline and I run that again, I only have one closing square bracket. If I add two spline, I do have two closing square bracket. Okay, at the moment when we get to a point where we have two closing square bracket, then we cannot use the append string to list node. Okay, it's going to fail. So let's delete this one and let's change a bit our approach here. We're going to tweak a bit the timing, and then we're going to find a better way to recombine all those curves. Let's spread those nodes so we have some space to work. So here I was happy with that spaceship and the static points. I'm going to leave them like that. Here I'm going to create two of those. And I'm going to work on each character separately, and that's going to allow me to do different timing for them, because at the moment we're stuck with the same points to sample for all the splines. So let's remove one of the curve. Let's start with a girl, and we are going to change a bit the way she turns, because it wasn't very successful. And if you look at the point, display sample point, at the moment they're all uniformly distributed along that spline. But you can change the mode here to speed, the method. And then all the points are going to be, if you look closely, you're going to get the same amount of point between each control of your curve. So if you get those two controls closer together, then you're going to have way more point between that pixel and less point between that pixel and that pixel. So I'm going to do that to have a slower turn at the beginning, and then it does speed up a bit. It's like it's going to delay the motion. And then for our guy, so we're going to delete the curve that we don't need. We're going to make him run away. And we're going to use the same trick. So if we display the sample points, and then we're going to have like more point at the beginning and then less point at the end. We're going to disconnect that point to sample here, and we're going to bring that down maybe to 70. And then that means that this curve, the motion of that spline here, is going to be finished sooner than this one. Okay, so we're going to have like hopefully the guy leaving quite quickly, and then the woman still turning around. So now we need to find a way to combine all of that. So here and here we have two spline editor, and each of them have only one spline. So there is only one opening square bracket and one closing square bracket. And here we have a spline editor with multiple spline. So there is two opening square bracket and two closing square bracket. We're going to be using the concatenate node. So we can do coordinate to coordinate. And then same here. And for now, we're just going to put that into a preview any so we can see how it's going to look like. If you run it. Now we have two opening square bracket. And then at the end, we only have one closing bracket. Okay, so we're missing one. So I'm going to add a replace here. And I'm going to be looking for the closing square bracket. I'm going to replace it by 2. No, that's fine. Now, if you look closely, because this guy here had 2 opening square bracket and 2 closing square one, there should be an extra closing square bracket somewhere that we need to get rid of here. Okay, so we have 2 closing square brackets that we need to remove. So we're going to use a replace again. Before we do the concatenation, looking for 2 closing square bracket replaced by 1. So that removed it. And now we need to make sure that each group of coordinate is separated by a comma. So we're going to add the delimiter here in our concatenate node, and it's going to be a comma and a comma. And now I see that my comma is back. Perfect. So that should be good. So now if I don't need my append to string to list anymore, and if I put the output of that into my reroute, so we see what we get. We now have all our tracks that are working nicely, of the spaceship going up, the guy running away, and the woman slowly rotating. So let's run that generation and see where we land. Yep, there is a small bug that wasn't expected. It could be solved with some additional step, but instead we're going to try to prompt it. So we're going to say 2 Lego people are turning towards the takeoff. The Lego man is running away. And rerun that. And that solved it. I really like how she's waving goodbye. Don't forget that if you're struggling to get what you want to get with your model, you can always try to prompt it. It often helps solving some of those bugs. Okay, so I'm going to save my scene. I'm quite happy with that. Now we're going to look into the next step, which is adding a thruster effect to the spaceship. To do that, we're going to create a shape that we're going to attach to the spaceship, and that's going to define the area where we want the thruster to happen. And then we're going to go into VACE to do some inpainting. To attach a shape to the spaceship, I'm going to do some tracking. That's going to give me the opportunity to introduce CoTracker. So let's look into that now. I'm going to use a load video upload to load the video that we've just created. And let me bypass those video combine node first so we don't put on the graph while we're working on the second part of this tutorial. Now let's load our CoTracker point tracking node. Image, cut into image, and then we're going to use the video combine to see the output of our tracking. The first time you're running that node is going to download the model for you, so be patient. To better understand what's happening, let's set the number of points to a big number. Let's set the confidence ratio to 0 and the minimum distance to 0, and we run it. So here, the node is creating tracking points with a resolution of 20 per 20, so 20 in each axis because of the grid size that's defined here. Then it's going to make sure that in total we don't have more than 10,000 points. Then it's going to track those points over time, so they're going to attach to different objects, so attach to the spaceship or to my characters. And then if some points are not doing a great job, it's going to look at the confidence threshold. Right now we have 0, so we're going to keep all the points. But if we had a larger value, like 0.9, it would get rid of points which are not really good. Sometimes the results are a bit surprising, but that's what it does. Then we have a minimum distance node, and that's going to happen at the end of the tracking. It's going to ensure that points do not overlap each other. As you can see, like I have some situation where point ended up being quite close. So I can increase that number to do some filtering. And that ensures that even if you use quite a defined grid size to make sure you're going to track each object, you can still end up with a coarse output if that's what you're after. We have the force offload that ensure that once the work is complete, we offload everything to CPU to free some VRAM. And then we have the enable backward that allows the tracking to happen forward and backward. So if you have some new objects that are appearing into frame halfway through the shot, you might want to turn on the enable backward to be able to capture those motions. So in my case, I just want one tracking point around the thruster of the spaceship. And I could definitely create a curve and do that manually, but the goal is to show you that node, so that's why I'm going to do it this way. So it can be a bit tricky because right now I do have points everywhere. So what I would like to do is to ensure that the tracking only happens around the thruster area, so we can use a tracking mask. So I'm going to create a new spline editor. I'm going to go image into background image. I'm going to do a mask to image and preview image. Helps if I create a new canvas. There you go. So I don't need a full curve here. I only need a static point where the thruster is going to be. I'm going to make sure to delete the other spline that I don't need. Then I'm going to create an object that I'm going to put on that path. I'm going to use a coordinate. I didn't need that. And here I've added a circle on that tracking point. So unfortunately, I cannot set the number of points to 1. So the smaller value I can go to is 2. So I end up with 2 of them. I just need 1 frame. So I can do an image from batch node. And then I'm going to say I just want a batch of 1, so it's going to give me a single frame. Now if I convert this image to a mask, and I put it in the tracking mask, now I only have point around the spaceship thrusters, okay? We're going to increase the minimum distance until we only have 1 point that is left. And I'm also going to reduce the size of that sphere here, so make it a smaller sphere around the thruster, so we don't pick points from behind. Okay, almost there. Increase that value a bit further. That's interesting how it doesn't want to delete and leave me just a single point. If the min distance doesn't do the trick, let's force it with the max number of points. And then we're going to say, whatever happens, I just want 1 point. Okay, that's better. Now that we have that, we're going to parent a shape on that thruster that's going to be tracking with a tracking point. So we're going to use the same trick that we've used here with the create shape image and path. Let's do that. And take the tracking result, go into the coordinates. And we're going to duplicate that node so we can see the result. And now I see my sphere that goes up with my thruster. Let's see them together so it's easier to preview. So let's use an image composite masked. So we're going to use our source. It would help if I pipe things in the right direction. Okay, that's better. So we use as destination, we use our input footage, and then as source and mask, we use our shape that we just created. So now I would like to animate the scale of that sphere. And to do that, we're going to use another spline editor. Again, we're going to go image into background image. And we're going to feed the float into a size multiplier. So the spline editor can output coordinate for a point, but it also can output a 0 to 1 value. I mean, I say 0 to 1, but it can be anything. Here it says min value and max value, 0 to 1, so it would be a 0 to 1 value. So if I run that, it's going to complain, which is normal. I need to create canvas. If I do that, it doesn't change anything yet. What's important is we need to make sure that we have the same amount of coordinates coming from tracking result that we have the for float. So if I look with a preview any here, and I look at the output of my tracking, and then I look at the output from my float, what's happening is that I do have 1 tracking point per frame, and I'm working with 81 frame, but I just have 16 floats because here my point to sample is 16. So we're going to set that one to 81. And now I see my sphere being animated. Let's tweak the motion a little bit to make it more interesting. Let's stretch it in height. And now let's tweak that curve here. Maybe a bit too fast. So that should be good. To make that mask a bit more interesting, we're going to mask it with our spaceship. So let's use segment anything to isolate the spaceship, and then we can multiply that mask with the other one. But to do that, let's use sum2 segmentation, and then we're going to use load sum2 model to download the model. We're also going to require a point editor to add some tracking point. So sum2 model goes into sum2 model, positive coordinate goes into coordinate positive, negative into negative. Then we need our image, so let's use this input footage here. Let's create a new canvas. And let's preview that mask. So let's do a mask to image. And let's duplicate that combine node so we can see the result. The first time you're going to use that node is going to download the model for you. Let's start with the base model and see where we land. I'm missing an image, so let's do that. Let's connect it as well. And let's add a reroute to make it easier to work with our graph. Okay, so one thing that's important to do is to make sure that we're turning on video instead of single image. And then we're going to create the point that we need. So we're gonna put some tracker point, positive in green and negative in red. And we can create more than those. So we can use a shift click to add some positive one. And right click shift to add some negative one. And let's rerun that. We've seen better. Let's add a few more points to see if we can improve it. I'm sure I'm doing something that's a bit overkill, but it's pretty fast, so I don't mind too much. Okay, let's try with a better model. Let's take the large. And let's get rid of some additional things. I wish I was a bit better than that. Okay, one more try. Almost there. This image is gonna get covered. Okay, let's call it good enough for what we have to do. We are going to invert that image and we are going to multiply it with our growing sphere here. With a mask composite. That should work out for what we have to do. We are going to grow the mask a little bit, just so we hit a bit some of the edges of the thruster with the grow mask. Maybe give it 5 pixels. And now we need to convert that into an image because my input image doesn't match anymore. Here you go. Sweet. Let's reorganize this node a little bit. So what we've done here is we've created the area where we're going to do the inpainting, and we're going to be using VACE for the inpainting. So now VACE needs pixel value of 50% gray if we're going to inpaint something. And at the moment we have white, which doesn't help us. So let's create a solid mask. It's going to give us a value, and we're going to say 0.5 to do 50% of gray. And we are going to use the image composite masked again. So we're going to use that original image that we had here. I don't even know in which input to put them, but we'll figure it out soon. Let's convert that mask to image. And let's update here. And that's better. So before going into VACE, what we have to do now is to work on the design of our thruster. So let's do that. I'm going to create my thruster effect in GIMP. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be in the same location where you want it. So I've loaded the image that I've been working with. I'm going to create a new layer. And then I'm going to design a 2D thruster effect. Let's grab some red. Once you're happy with it, don't forget to disable the background, and then you're going to save that into your input folder of ComfyUI as your thruster as a PNG. Now what we need to do is we need to load a VACE workflow and start working on our final video. So let's go into the templates, ComfyUI 1 video wrapper, and we're going to grab this VACE example here. Don't worry about def anything, we won't be using it. All I need is that section here that says video outpainting and the model section. So let's get rid of everything else. Let's copy and paste that and bring them into our scene. Let's enable this node. I'm going to right click and set the group node to always. We're going to make sure we have all the models loaded. So if you are missing anything, you can download them. So I think we have links here. I'm going to be using the VACE 14 billion parameters, and they're here. So let's set my VAE. Let's set the VACE model. Use the FP8. I'm using one text to video 14B. I'm going to use FP16 fast. I'm going to use a block swap of 20 to not run out of memory. And I'm going to do the compile and make sure I have the text encoder, which I do, which is perfect. Okay, I can save that. Now here, what we need is grab our input image, which is this one. Is there a point here? What did I do? Did I combine that with a tracker? Yes, I did combine it with a tracker, which was a mistake. So let's go back to our original footage, which is here. I think I've added a reroute somewhere. Yes, I did the reroute here. And let's use that footage. We don't want to have a red tracker on our final picture. It's better. So that's going to be our source footage. So we're going to plug it here. We don't need that video upload anymore. We don't need that resize. It already has the right resolution. Let's add a reroute here. We actually don't need the padding either. I can leave that. Doesn't do anything, but that's fine. Then we need to add a couple of things. We're going to need a reference image, and that reference image is going to be the thruster that we've created. Let's load it. I didn't refresh the definition, so let's do that now. Here you go. That's my thruster. So I did a mistake. The thruster needs to be on white, not black. So let's go back into GIMP. Let's create another layer. Let's save that again. If we refresh the definition. Okay, that's better. That's gonna go into our reference image. Make sure it has the same size that your input video. And here I can see it's actually 2K, so that's not what I want. So let's do a resize image. Make sure it's 512. If you want to be extremely sure, you can use that get image size and count here, and we're going to plug the width and the height here. Perfect. We need to add a prompt. So let's copy the prompt that we had earlier, and we're going to finish it. Lego spaceship launches into the air. 2 Lego people are turning towards the takeoff. The Lego man is running away. I'm going to remove that part because it's not relevant to what we're doing with VACE. Since we are... Is it relevant? Let's look at where the mask is. Yeah, one character is actually going into the mask area. So yes, let's keep it because we want to make sure that the model can recreate what is going to be inpainted. But we're going to add also an extra section. Let's say with bright orange and yellow flames bursting from its thruster at high speed. What are we missing? We are missing an input mask. So we've put the input image, but we also need that mask area here. And that mask is this one. So let's put it into the input mask. Actually, let's add a reroute again. So we can also add it here in that mask so we can see the result. For now, I'm going to keep the steps quite low to 10. Let's bypass that combine node. I don't need it for now. Actually, I'm going to rename Lego ATI VACE. Let's create another one. Here we have a multi-view that's going to give us a breakdown. So let's have also the final, which is only that render separately. Sweet, sweet. But for now, let's bypass them. So we debug our input. So what do we have? Here. Okay, so that's good. This input is correct there. Let's preview the mask as well. Because I don't have anything on that first frame, so it's hard to see if it's really the right thing. So we have our input image that's correct, our mask that is correct, our reference image that is correct. We do have a prompt. We reduce the steps, And we set our output. I think we're good to go. So let's give that a go. Well, we are not good to go. So I'm missing something. Oh, this node here is failing. So let's expand that. Interesting. The input video got broken at some point. I'm not too sure why. Now we're running. Okay, we're running out of RAM, so let's go back into our model section, make sure that we didn't break anything. Block to swap is 20, it's fine. That should be all good for me. What's going on here? Okay, let's try to free the models. Okay, we're back to 300, so let's give that a go again. Yay! I had to take a break because my VFX supervisor, aka my son, came home and gave me so many notes. So we're going to be looking at those together and address all of them. So first, we need to fix that generation that's quite blurry. Then we need to add some smoke on the table, so it's not just a fire. And you also want to have that small spacecraft that attaches the right wing to detach from the spaceship and fly away. And there is also a bit of a piece of Lego here that's disappearing halfway through the shot. So we're going to go through all of those. And at the same time, we're going to reorganize the scene, make sure it's clean, everything is properly named, so you can use it for yourself. So let's do that. So we're going to separate everything into 3 sections and do proper cache on disk halfway, just to make sure that we keep our memory usage as low as possible, because I've been running out of memory quite a few times. So let's take that first section here. Let's select this node, and we're going to add a group. So we're going to put that here. Then we're going to take the second section, do the same thing. And the third section. That's going to be our VACE. That's going to be ATI. That's going to be our mask. I'm also going to make sure that I only save what I need to save on disk. So I'm going to disable the save output that I don't need. And I'm going to save everything in a Lego folder just for future reference. It will be easier to find them. That's my ATI breakdown. ATI, I'm going to increase the quality, so brings the CRF value to 15 instead of 19. That's fine. This one is saved on disk with metadata. It's perfect. Let's disable what we don't need. Don't need to save that. This one is going to be Lego mask. Same, put the CRF to 15. Don't need to save that. Don't need to save that. This last one gonna be Lego. This breakdown. 15. This 15. Sweet. And this way, we should have a Lego folder that's created in our output folder inside ComfyUI, and all our generation are going to be saved there. We are going to go into game so we can redo our artwork. So we're going to do a better looking thrusters, and we're also going to do a quick drawing for some smoke. So let's get rid of that one that we don't need. And let's create a new layer. Actually, 2 layers. One for the thruster. One for smoke. Okay, it doesn't have to be amazingly perfect, but at least making sure it looks a bit better than before. That will help us. So we're going to save that. Perfect. We will refresh no definition and have it loaded for after. Okay, awesome. Let's bypass this group for now. So let's set group to never. And this one as well. And we're going to focus on the ATI group for now. So we've been asked to ensure that this small spacecraft here detaches and fly away. So let's do that. We're going to grab the Spline editor, the first one where we've been adding the motion of the spaceship, and we're going to add a new curve, a new spline. And let's grab our spacecraft and have it fly away. Let's do a bit of cleanup at the same time. This is not relevant anymore. I don't need that. Let's remove that. We're going to update our prompt to reflect the change that we've done. And I'm going to also add a mention to say that once the spacecraft is gone, we need to make sure that both wings remains open. I do that to help guide the generation, as we're going to have a piece of the spaceship flying away. We need to help the model to tell it what's going to happen to the rest of the image. If we don't do that, we might be surprised with the result. To help resolve the piece here that's disappearing, I'm also going to increase the number of steps from 10 to 15. And I think that's all good for now. So let's run that one and see what we get. I think we're pretty good. We still have a piece of the spaceship that disappeared. I'm going to increase the steps one more time to 20 and see if we can resolve it. But otherwise, I like the reflection that's happening on the spaceship, and everything else is pretty good. While that's cooking, let's work on the second part, which is the masking. So what we needed to do here is I'm going to clean a bit that crazy segmentation that has with too many tracking points. We also need to create a new mask for the smoke that we're going to generate. Because at the moment, we've only done a mask for the thruster. We now need to add another one to define the area where we're going to have the smoke interacting on the ground. And because the people are walking in front of the mask, we're going to mask them out, so create a mask for them too. Actually, let's do that first. If we re-enable that group so we can work with it, so set group nodes to always. I'm going to duplicate that. So Ctrl-C, Ctrl-Shift-V to paste with the same input. I'm going to get a new canvas, and I'm going to grab our people. Remember, Shift left click to add points, Shift right click to add some negative tracker. That will be our character. Let's redo this one as well. It's way too busy. That's going to be our spaceship. Just going to see if the updated render looks better before I move to the rest of the workflow. And it sure did. So as we can see, we are now keeping that piece that was disappearing before. Sweet. So let's save that. So we're going to source. So now we have a Lego folder. So we're grabbing the last ATI one. Perfect. Shouldn't forget to bypass that group now, because we're done working with ATI. Let's actually just rerun that section to see what we get. Instead of using a simple convert mask to image to preview the mask, what we can do is we can use a mask image and mask preview. So let's use that instead. It will be easier to see what happens. So if we grab our input image and we grab the mask that we generated, so we're going to do a pass through to yes. We're going to set a color. So we're going to put that mask as red. So 255, 0, and 0. And that's what we're going to preview. And I'm going to do the same here. Actually, I should use that reroute instead of going all the way to the top. Just trying to keep our noodles in place. Sweet. Interesting. So this guy disappeared from here, and it's appearing from this one. That's really weird, but that's okay. Let's look at the segmentation models that we're using here. There are actually quite a few, so if you're not extremely happy with the result from one, you can definitely try another one. Let's move to the 2.1 version and see what we get. Sweet, that fixed our error. I think everything else is reasonably good, so we're going to use that as is. That's for the segmentation. Now we need to create a region for the smoke, so let's do that. What we're going to do is we're going to reuse the same logic that we had here. So we are going to create a shape image on path and have it at the base of the spaceship. And we are going to make that quite a wide shape. Let's go 600 and reasonably tall, 400. Then we are going to multiply the scale of that shape with the same animation that is affecting the scale of our thruster. And that animation is coming from that spline editor here. And we are going to preview that. Can use the same node. Actually, we can just copy and paste what we had here. Can change the color if we wanted to. Sweet. So our mask is currently not animated in terms of the scale, despite having a curve here. So if you remember what we said, we needed to make sure the amount of scale keyframe is the same amount of coordinates. So if I look at what's coming out of that node here, where we have our coordinate for the location of that shape, at the moment there is only 2 x and y coordinate because there is a point to sample set to 2 here. However, I do have 81 frame in my shot, so I'm going to change that one to 81 frame. Now I do have 81 coordinates here. And as expected, that shape now starts to move. I'm not going to break that part here, so don't worry about it because I already had an image from batch here that only selects the first frame. So even if I set 81 here, I'm still going to land with only 1 frame for that mask here, so I'm not breaking anything. Okay, let's tweak this shape a bit. That should be fine for what I need. Now we need to update that part of the workflow to make sure we combine all the different pieces. So we're going to use multiple mask composite. Now we're going to triple check what we're doing. So here I had only my thruster. Let's add this one first. And it's not a multiply that we need to do. We need to do an OR. So we keep both of them without inverting. Sweet. Now that we combine those two, let's mask out the people. So we're going to do another mask composite. Grab the mask from our people. And this time we're going to multiply, I think. Perfect. Then I add a grow mask to eat a bit into the thruster, so I can bring that one back just for the thruster. Okay, so we just made that mask a bit wider, which is great. Just gonna reduce a bit my scale towards the end to avoid going over the spaceship. Yeah, that looks better. Actually, I did grow in the wrong direction, or I did put the grow after or before. So let's do that. That's better. Trying to remove the gap I had with my thrusters. So now that we're good here, we are going to generate our gray area. Remember that for VACE, we need to make sure that the inpainting area has a value of gray of 0.5. That's using the solid mask nodes. We are now going to save that as an image and an alpha. So we're going to not rely on the MP4 anymore, but on the 16-bit PNG to make sure we can save both. But before doing that, we need to combine our image with the alpha. So let's do that. And we're going to output that in a separate folder. So let's add one more slash here. It returns an error. However, if I look at the output, I should still have my mask folder with all my images. So the error is purely telling you that it's not able to load it back to give you the preview, but the writing did happen properly. One thing to note is that, as usual, ComfyUI save an extra image with the metadata, so you can recreate the workflow by just dragging and dropping that file into ComfyUI. But that also means that now I have 82 images instead of 81. I have the 81 images for my sequence plus an extra image. So we'll have to keep that in mind for later. So we're good here. We're going to bypass that group. We're done with that section. And now we're going to be focusing on VACE. We need to bring the image back. So let's disconnect the 3 root. Don't need them anymore. And instead, we're going to be using another node from Kijai, which is load images from folder. We're going to grab that path that we've just used to output all our images. Make sure the resolution is 512 by 512. And we're going to cap to 81 frame because, as I said, we don't need the extra frame here. We don't need 82, we just want the 81. Image goes into our reroute image, and mask goes into our reroute mask. Gonna bypass the output for now so we don't put on the entire graph. I just want to make sure that my input look correct. And this should do. Sweet. We have our inpainting area. We have our inpainting mask. We do have our thruster and our fire as reference. What about the prompt? We need to update our prompt to include the fact that we now have smoke. So let's do that. The billowy gray smoke spreads outward on the table surface. Now, remember I said that the render was quite soft, and that's coming from our Tcache optimization. So I'm going to disconnect that for now, as we're working on the close to final version. I'm also going to increase our steps to 20. It's a bit high, it's going to take longer, but I'm hopeful this version is going to be pretty good, so let's give that a go. I realized that I did something wrong with my masking combination because the thrusters are getting masked out. So let's fix that. Yeah, that's better. I wanted to preserve the shape of my thrusters so they don't get lost too much. That will help the model as well, figuring out where the fire is supposed to be. I'm going to rewrite my sequence. I'm going to write it in a different folder just to avoid any issue of caching. And we're going to rerun that generation, and I will see you in a few minutes once that's done. So that's a fail. And on top of the thruster, smoke, and fire not working, we do have some artifacts we need to fix here from the mask area. Let's fix those. So let me bypass that group for now, set it to never. And we can go back one last time into our mask area. What I'm thinking is, let's bypass the output for now. I think VACE is struggling with inpainting area where there is not enough region at the earlier in the shot, which contrasts with our reference image that's quite developed. So let's help it a bit there. So we are going to change our min value to 0.4 in our scale factor. And that's going to ensure that earlier in the shot, we have more area to inpaint, which works better with our shot anyway, because the spaceship is already in the air quite early. The other thing we need to change is the artifacts that we're seeing here. We're eating too much into the spaceship. And I think my grow mask here might not have been such a good idea. So let's kill it. So now we are closer to the region. Wait, there's still a bit of an artifact coming from Sam in this area, but it's just one frame, so I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to write out that sequence. I'm going to update the folder. Let's call it mask final. That will motivate me to not change it again. And let's set that group to never. Sweet. Back to our VACE section. We need to update the output. Let's bypass this for now. Let's making sure that our sequence look as expected for our input, which it does, which is great. While we're at it, I'm going to update that breakdown view to make it more complete. So we are going to expand this node to see what they do. So at the moment, we are using an image concatenate multi that takes the output from the sampler. Then we're adding a black margin. So here we're having a frame that's just 8 pixels wide. And then we're taking also our input mask and adding a label here, which says input, and fitting it into that multi-view. I would like to add a couple more things, so let's duplicate that. So I'm going to add my, let's rename it the labels. I'm going to show the ATI input, I'm going to show the masks. I'm going to show the reference, and the one without label will be the output. Let's grab the reference. I need to load my ATI output, which is this one. Try this one. Let's load that. Perfect. So we have our final image. Actually, let's change the order. Let's start with the ATI image at the very top. Then we're going to show our reference. Then we're going to show our mask. Finally, we're going to show our output. We can collapse some nodes to make it easier to see. And then we need to concatenate those two. Okay, let's change the direction to the right, because that's what I've been organizing. And finally, we're using one last image concatenate. And we're going to go to the bottom. And that's what we're going to write out. So that's for our updated breakdown. Hopefully I didn't break anything. We will check the results soon. Now, to make sure that we actually see something, we say that we change the mask, so hopefully that would help. The other thing we can do is to change the prompt one more time. I'm not going to change it too much. I'm just going to do a small variation to encourage the model to tweak a bit the result. It's not as drastic as changing the seed, but I'm going to obviously try to insist on what I want to see. From a white table with large, high speed, orange and yellow flames bursting from its thrusters. Sweet. And lastly, so we don't have to wait for so long, I'm going to reduce my steps to 15. I'm going to keep Tcache disconnected. And I think we are good to go. So let's wish ourselves some luck and let's go. So this is progress, but I'm not a huge fan of the look. So I'm going to try to run one more generation and I will increase the strands of the one video VACE encode. Let's try 1.5 and see where we land. That's a bit of progress. We are closer to our reference and we see actually the 2D smoke popping out. However, at the moment, VACE treats the 2D smoke reference and its smoke as two different objects. And we are seeing a bit of grain as well. So what I'm thinking is we are going to tweak the prompt one more time and maybe increase the number of steps as well to resolve the grain. To the pillowy let's give that a go. So we are a bit closer to our final look, at least. There is only one smoke, and that's the one that looks like a 2D smoke, which is great. There's still some artifact grains at the bottom. The source of the thruster fire is a bit weird, and the direction is also weird. Let's address those issues. I'm also going to fix my breakdown view because there's an offset here. So let's just quickly tweak that. What's happening is because I do have a title on that side and I don't have one on the other side, it's creating an image that's longer on that side. And then when it tries to make them fit on the same row, because the one is longer, it just breaks the ratio overall. So I'm just going to add a label, just duplicate the one at the top, to put it at the bottom. I'm gonna expand it. And this one is going to be our final. I'm also going to change the name here. That should fix it. For the other issues, let's look at everything. I'm going to fix a couple of problems that I have on the input mask. There's an artifact here that happened at the beginning. And I'm also going to remove that weird bulge that's happening here, just in case that helps the model. So let's turn that group to never. Let's go back here to always. The bulge is coming from the fact that both my mask for the smoke and my mask for the thrusters share the same scale, and at the moment it is too high for the thruster, so I have this curve here that goes from 0.4 to 0.9 over time. So I'm going to duplicate that curve, and I'm going to pipe that one into the node for the thruster and leave that one for the smoke. And the one for the thruster, we're going to start with a scale of 0. Let's bypass my output for now, just so we see the preview before writing it on disk. Right, so that fixed that one. Still seeing that artifact here, and I think that's coming from the segmentation model. Yeah, we're seeing it here. We tried different model. You could try that again to see if you find one better. I haven't found one better for that specific case, but you can also play with the precision. So at the moment we're using BF16, we can try FP16, see if that changes anything. And that seems to fix it, so that's great. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to write out that sequence of the new mask. So, as a reminder, never write something final because it's never final. Final, let's call it very final. Sweet. So now we can set that group to never again and go back here. Let's bypass the output so we don't pull on the whole graph. Let's update the path to the new mask. Let's make sure it's working as expected. Sweet. So that's the new input mask sorted. What else can we tweak here? So I've been running into issues with the quality of my output, like getting some grains. And overall, there's still other artifacts, some fine artifacts I'm trying to resolve. So we're thinking to change the precision of the model that I'm using. I've been using FP8 everywhere, both for the VACE module and for the base model. So I'm going to change that to BF16, which has more precision. So let's do that. BF16 here, and same here. Then change the base precision as well to BF16. It's going to make the generation slower, but it should give us more details. I'm going to change the attention to stage attention. I should have done that way before, but that should make my generation faster. Now, because I'm using the BF16 model, it's going to require more VRAM, so you need to increase that blocks to swap based on your machine. For me, a number of 26 should allow me to run those generation without running out of memory, but feel free to tweak that. For reference, I have a laptop with an RT 4090 and 16 gigs of VRAM. I think we're good there. I'm going to tweak my prompt again. It's a never-ending story, but I'm going to see if I can do something with the downward motion of the fire. I'm going to increase my CFG, the stress value of 6, to help it use that prompt a bit more. You can play with those numbers, but remember, if you go too high, you might start running in burnout effect, or it's going to look overly saturated or start breaking. But 6 hopefully should be good. And because I do have some kind of a static motion towards the end, I'm going to reduce the strength of my VACE effect to see if I can give the model a bit more freedom to do something a bit more realistic. Let's run a generation with those settings, because we've changed quite a lot, and see where we land. Okay, it would help if I pick the right model. So remember, here we're loading the 2.1 model, and here we're loading the VACE module. Don't make the same mistake as me. Let's try again. So we're still running out of memory here. So tweak these blocks to swap until you get something that works for you. Let's do it again now. I completely killed my machine. So let's relaunch ComfyUI. Everything is fine. What's happening is that when you are using block swap, it's moving a lot of data from the VRAM to the CPU to your machine RAM, and then it can run out of swap if you don't have enough. That's interesting. The motion of the thrusters look better. The shape of the smoke looks better as well, but we lost some of the motion. At least we don't have the weird artifact at the bottom anymore. Okay, I think we're getting close to a final, so I'm going to go a bit hardcore for the end. Let's get rid of the skip layer guidance and the experimental stuff. It is supposed to give better looking result, but it might not always apply to what you're trying to do. So for now, I'd like to run a pass with as much tweak on the sampler as possible to see what we can get. And I'm also going to boost a bit my steps to give more chances for the model to refine the result. This generation is going to take way longer, so I will see you in a little while, but hopefully that can get us closer to our end result. I'm quite happy with that, so I'm going to leave it there and show it to my VFX supervisor tonight when he comes home. Hopefully the shot gets approved. As usual, the scene is available in the description, so feel free to play with it. I'm looking forward to see all your Lego short film that you're going to come up with. If you have any question, drop us a comment. And if you learned something today, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for another episode of AInVFX.